Randy, you brought us inside the building here. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about what this is.
Yeah, happy to. So this building was just built. We just took ownership in this spring of 2021, and the main purpose of the building here is to hatch walleye. So we get walleye as brood stock from Little Bay to Knock, half hour down the road, and that occurs normally sometime in the month of April. And we bring those eggs here, and behind us here is a separate little room. This is our incoming egg room, and it's a whole separate area where we can disinfect the eggs, clean them up, and then we pass the eggs through this window. That way they're in a nice clean environment when they come over here and nothing gets contaminated in this side of the building.
Okay, so I see a lot of things, I don't know what they are sitting there. Maybe you could explain when the eggs come over, what do you do with them next? Well, after they're brought into the room, what happens to them next?
So yeah, they'll come into the room, and then we put them inside of hatching jars. So this is an example of a hatching jar. We'll fill the eggs up. We'll put eggs inside here up to, about here or so, usually about 3 liters worth of eggs. Water goes inside of it, and the eggs just barely roll around inside of there. And they'll stay there for roughly 28 to 30 days or so, depending on the water temperature. And then they'll hatch. And when they hatch, they fall out the top here. And as I'll show you here in a minute, they get to go for a little water slide ride, and they'll fall inside of our fish tanks.
Oh, no kidding. Well, sounds simple, but...
Sounds simple, yeah.
Probably not as simple as it sounds.
There's a little more to it than that.
Yeah. Okay, so they come out, they've hatched, now they're little minnows.
They hatch. They are tiny. They are about the size, they are very, very tiny. They have a little yolk sac belly on them. So, when they hatch out of the eggs, the yolk sac, the egg kind of is still attached to their belly, and that's their food source for a little while. They're just absorbing that nutrients. And so we want to get them out of our facility, this building here, in roughly 3 days or so. And from here, for the most part, we'd like to get them into ponds. So people around the Upper Peninsula, all around the state, are doing when we hatch walleye fry either here at another place in Lower Michigan. A lot of times they go to different ponds to finish off, and people have rearing ponds. They have a little yolk sac belly on them. So when they hatch out of the eggs, the yolk sac, the egg kind of is still attached to their belly, and that's their food source for a little while. They're just absorbing that nutrients. And so we want to get them out of our facility, this building here, in roughly 3 days or so. And from here, for the most part, we'd like to get them into ponds. So people around the Upper Peninsula, all around the state, are doing when we hatch walleye fry either here at another place in Lower Michigan. A lot of times they go to different ponds to finish off, and people have rearing ponds, and we'll talk about more of those when we're outside.
Okay, that's what's outside.
Yeah, we have more outside, and you caught us fertilizing ponds. So we're raising walleyes in there, but right now we're raising zooplankton, bugs. We want to have food for the walleye. So the biggest thing we do is monitor the ponds and try to get food in there for our walleye to eat by themselves.
Now, how are you getting the bugs in there?
So some of them, what we did was we went around to some natural lakes and ponds and collected some zooplankton early in the season and inoculated some of those ponds to let them reproduce before the walleye even got in there, to try to get a food started for them.
So you got it ready for them when they get there?
That's the hope, is they got a little smorgasbord and they're ready. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look outside and see what the ponds look like.
Sounds good.
We're down here today. We are at the Thompson Creek Fish Hatchery. Now, we have been here before, and if you remember that, this may look a whole lot different. That's because this is a whole new part of it. I'm with Randy right now, and Randy, maybe you can explain where we're standing and how's this compared to the rest of it?
Right. Well, Tom, welcome. Glad to have you out here. So this is a brand new project for us. We just started it. We gained ownership of this project this past spring, just before walleye spawning season occurred. It's been going on for a couple of years. It's roughly a $10 million project to have this and some other work down at the old hatchery. But this facility is mostly a walleye rearing facility. We hatch the walleye and we put them in the ponds behind us. And after the walleye get raised and we stock them from these ponds, we'll drain everything and refill water up, and then we'll bring muskie in, and then we'll raise those through the fall, and then hopefully get them out of there before it turns to ice.
Well, that's pretty cool. We've got a series of ponds out here. Maybe you can explain how come there's so many and what do they do?
Right. So the first pond behind us is a solar pond. That's just a pond where all the water goes into and actually warms up a little bit. So when we want to add water to a rearing pond where the fish are at, we're not dumping in cold well water on top of them. They can get a little bit water, it's a little bit warmer, closer to what their temperature is normally. And especially when we go to harvest fish into one of the kettles that we have, we don't want to flush a pond worth of fish inside of there that are warm and then put a bunch of well water on them and thermal shock. They get really cold. So that's what this first pond is. The other ponds, there's 6 other ponds. 2 of them are 1 acre ponds, and then 4 others are half-acre ponds. They are you can see the size difference in when you look at them, but in reality, they are the same volume of water. They're roughly about 1 million gallons of water. So the 1 acre ones are just shallow. They're shallower, whereas the other ponds are deeper.
Okay. Why do you have some shallow and some deep?
Well, the thought is with the shallower ones, they can be better for certain species of fish, and we can have warmer temperatures with the shallower. They're a nice black line, so we can have hopefully, some better temperatures come from those, and then the deeper ones can be a little bit, we're still playing with that to see how well which ones do. Some hatcheries that we've talked to feel that muskie do better in some ponds and walleye do better than others, and we're going to find out for ourselves.
It looks like a good spot that birds might come down and eat some of these fish. What do you do about something like that?
Right, so we're positioned right off, we're only 1.5 miles off of US 2, so we have Lake Michigan right through the woods back there, and then we have Indian Lake, a big 8,000 acre lake just to our north, and so we got lots of birds. So what we have around each of our rearing ponds is a series of nets. So we have nets going up the sides, nets on the top. We don't want to have the birds come in and take all of our
they probably eat everything.
They will try, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Now, you've got all these fish in the ponds, and they grow to a certain length then before you take them out?
Yep. So our goal, ultimately, this year we just started this process. So we took it literally a few weeks before walleye spawning started, and we're still scrambling, trying to get everything together and to make purchases and get everything ready for it. But we thought, you know what, we can still try this year. So this year's kind of an experimental year. Our goal is to raise up to 250,000 walleye, which are fingerling size, so about 1.5 inches or so long. So that's our goal, is that at some point we're going to get used to these ponds, we're going to get through some experiments and get to rear about 250,000 walleyes. And then after that, we'll drain those like I was mentioning earlier. We'll drain them, and then Wolf Lake State Fish Hatchery downstate is currently getting, they just obtained some muskie eggs, and as long as they have plenty there, they raise them to, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 inches, and then they'll transfer some up to us, and then they'll go into our ponds, and the hope is for us to get back about 18,000 or so muskie from these ponds by this fall as well.
Now, when it comes time to get these fish out of these ponds, how do you go about that? These are big ponds. You don't fish them out.
They are big, yeah, and they're pretty small. Some of the little guys are pretty small. So there's just 2 different series of drains on the pond. So each we can actually drain the ponds by themselves, and we can open a valve and just start slowly draining. And they have screens on it to make sure the fish don't get sucked into the tubes and flush out. So that's one way we can drain them right at the pond, and we'll see that when we get a little bit closer. We can see those valves. Or we have the ability to take the screens out and let the fish just go for a water slide ride underground, and they can go through a bunch of pipes and wind up at what we call an external harvest kettle, where they just fall into a different area full of screens, and all the fish is staged inside of there. We could park a truck right next to it and then just scoop the fish up, do some weight samples so we can count them and estimate how many there are, and then pass them right onto a truck.
Wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
What do you say we get closer, take a look?
Definitely.